Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Friday, February 13th, 2026. And, well, look, I'm not superstitious. I walk under ladders. I own a black cat. But today.
Yeah.
Today is honestly one of those days that is going to be, bolded in the history books.
Yeah.
You're looking at a legal ruling that dropped this morning in London, and it has absolutely shattered the status quo.
It really has. And usually when we say historic, we're maybe hyping it up a little bit. But this morning, the High Court did something that has, well, literally never happened before in the history of British counter-terror law.
Never.
Never. They overturned a prescription order.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately because the headline is wild, but the details are, they're even wilder. The group at the center of all this is Palestine Action.
Right.
For the last, 7 or 8 months? Since around July 2025, they have been proscribed.
Which is really just the polite legal term for banned as terrorists.
Exactly. And just so we're clear on the stakes here, being proscribed doesn't just mean you can't have a meeting. It means you are legally in the same bucket as ISIS or Al-Qaeda.
Yeah. If you wear a T-shirt supporting them, you could face prison.
Up to 14 years in some cases, right?
But that's right. It effectively turns a protest movement into a criminal enterprise where, mere association is a felony.
And today, 3 senior judges at the High Court looked at that ban and said, actually, no, that was unlawful.
Unlawful and disproportionate. Those were the exact words from Dame Victoria Sharp, who's the president of the King's Bench Division.
But here is where my brain starts to hurt, and this is why I need you here. Even though the court said the ban is unlawful, the government, specifically the new Home Secretary Shavana Mahmood, is appealing. So the ban is, sort of still there? But the police aren't arresting people. We have thousands of people in this legal limbo.
It is a complete mess. We are in a state of what lawyers call suspensive effect. The law is technically alive, but it's kind of in a coma.
Okay, we need to sift through this whole stack of sources. We've got Novara Media, The Guardian, Al Jazeera, The Works. I want to understand 3 things.
Go for it.
First, how do the judges distinguish between smashing windows and terrorism? Second, what happens to the, nearly 3,000 people arrested? And third, why is the government doubling down on this?
Let's start with the ruling itself, because this is it's a real masterclass in legal definitions.
So take us into the courtroom. This was a judicial review, right? Which means they weren't deciding if Palestine Action are, the good guys.
Not all.
They were deciding if the government followed its own rules.
Precisely. A judicial review checks the decision-making process. The court looked at the decision made by the former Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, back in 2025. And the judges, they found that she essentially ignored her own rule book.
Ignored it how?
Well, to ban a group under the Terrorism Act 2000, you have to prove 2 things. 1, that they are committing terrorism as it's defined in the act.
Okay.
And 2, that banning them is a proportionate response to the threat they pose.
And the government's argument was that Palestine Action, who are, famous for occupying factories, smashing roofs, spraying red paint, they fit that definition.
Right. The government argued that this property damage was designed to intimidate either the government or the public for a political cause, and that is the textbook definition of terrorism.
That there's a catch.
A big one. If the action involves serious violence or creates a serious risk to health and safety.
And the judges disagreed that it did.
Fundamentally. And this really is the aha moment in the ruling. Dame Victoria Sharp and her colleagues said that while Palestine Action definitely promotes criminality, they were very clear on that.
Sure, they break stuff.
Right. But it does not meet the threshold of terrorism.
Right, so there is a legal line, a clear one, between criminality and terrorism.
A huge one. The court effectively said, look, we have laws for this. If someone smashes a window, that's criminal damage. If they break into a factory, that's aggravated trespass. We have a robust system to handle that.
You don't need to bring out the big guns.
Exactly. Using the Terrorism Act, which is the nuclear option, was disproportionate because the scale of the threat just didn't warrant it.
It's like, if I jaywalk to protest climate change, I'm breaking the law. But if you call me a terrorist for it, you've gone way too far.
That's a simple version, but yes.
Yeah.
The court said existing criminal law is sufficient. You don't need to brand a grandmother a terrorist because she held a banner outside a factory where someone else threw paint.
That brings up the nature and scale argument I saw in the Navarro report. The judges said Yvette Cooper's decision was inconsistent with her own policy.
Yes. The government has internal metrics for what counts as a terror threat, usually involving indiscriminate killing or massive infrastructure attacks.
Right.
The judges pointed out that Palestine Action targets specific property weapons manufacturers, and they take steps to avoid hurting people. You can hate their methods, you can arrest them for the damage, but the court says you can't lump them in with suicide bombers.
And that must feel like a massive validation for the defense. I was reading the statement from Huda Amori, the co-founder. She did not hold back today.
Not at all. She called it a monumental victory. She described the original ban as I think the quote was, Trumpian abuse of power designed to appease lobbyists.
Wow. And it wasn't just her, though. The witness list for this review was bizarrely high profile.
It was almost a cultural event as much as a legal one. You had Sally Rooney, the Irish author, providing a witness statement.
Sally Rooney.
Yep. You also had Amnesty International, Liberty, and even the UN Special Rapporteur Ben Saul.
When you have Sally Rooney and the UN on the same docket, you know it's not just a standard court case.
Exactly. Their argument, all of them, was that this ban was a very significant interference with freedom of speech and assembly. That if you let the state label disruptive protest as terrorism, you effectively kill the right to protest entirely.
Okay, so the judges agree. They say unlawful. Victory lap, right?
You would think so, but this is where British politics enters the chat.
Enter Shabana Mahmood.
The current Home Secretary. She immediately, and I mean within minutes, issued a statement saying she is disappointed. She firmly disagrees that the ban was disproportionate.
Citing what?
Public safety and national security.
So she's appealing.
She is. And because of that appeal, the court ruled that the prescription order stays in place for now. It's a zombie law. It's dead in the eyes of the high court, but it's still walking around because of the appeal.
This is the part that feels incredibly dangerous for the average person. We have this unusual circumstances statement from the Metropolitan Police. I read it 3 times and it feels like a trap.
It's complex. Let's break down what the Met actually said. They recognize the court's ruling. So as of today, they have suspended arrests for Section 12 offenses.
And Section 12 is?
Supporting a prescribed organization. So holding a flag, chanting a slogan, wearing a T-shirt. Yesterday, that would get you arrested.
And today?
Today, the Met says they won't arrest you on the spot.
On the spot being the key phrase there.
Absolutely. They explicitly stated they will continue to gather evidence. They are filming everyone. They are building files. The logic is, we won't arrest you today, but if the government wins their appeal in 6 months, we've got the footage to come and get you then.
Wow. So it's basically a honeypot. Go ahead, exercise your rights, but smile for the camera because we might prosecute you retroactively.
That is exactly the fear that civil rights groups have. And to be clear, if you smash a window today, you are still getting arrested.
Of course. That's standard criminal law.
Right. But the support crimes are in this, suspended animation.
It just sounds chaotic. And we're not talking about a tiny fringe group here. The sheer volume of arrests since last July is staggering. I saw the numbers in Al Jazeera, and I thought it had to be a typo.
It's not a typo. Al Jazeera cites 2,787 arrests for terrorism offenses related to this ban.
2,700? That is massive.
And to put that into perspective, Novara Media points out that this is more arrests for terrorism in 6 months than occurred during the entire War on Terror era in the UK.
That is a mind-blowing statistic. We spent 2 decades hunting al-Qaeda and ISIS cells, and we arrested fewer people than we did in 6 months of hunting Palestine Action.
That's what the numbers show. And look at the demographic. The War on Terror had a very specific profile. This crackdown, it has netted vicars, pensioners, military veterans.
I saw that. People arrested for holding silent vigils, for holding signs saying, I oppose genocide.
And because of the ban, those signs are treated as inviting support for a terrorist organization. Usually that's maybe 6 months in prison. But because the government pushed for more serious charges, some of these people, grandmothers, students, are now facing up to 14 years.
14 years. And now they are all sitting at home watching this news, wondering if they're terrorists or if they're vindicated citizens.
It's a huge legal backlog. If the government loses the appeal, thousands of cases could be quashed. It would be an administrative nightmare.
And has anyone from, say, the UN weighed in on that?
The UN Special Rapporteur, Ben Saul, actually said the government should just apologize now and drop all the cases.
But they're not apologizing. In fact, it seems like the opposition, the conservatives, are backing the Labour government on this.
Completely. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp came out swinging, supporting the appeal. His argument is that when national security is at stake, there can be no hesitation. It's a rare moment of unity in Westminster.
But why? I mean, usually they love to tear each other apart. Why is this the hill they both want to die on?
I think we need to zoom out to the context of why this ban was brought in originally. It wasn't just because of some graffiti.
You're talking about the RAF base.
Exactly. Mid-2025, activists broke into an RAF base in Oxfordshire and sprayed red paint on military planes. That was the trigger. That was the moment the state said, okay, you are touching the military apparatus now. This isn't just protest anymore.
And the main target, broadly, has always been Elbit Systems.
Right. Israel's largest weapons manufacturer. Palestine Action's whole stated goal, their mission statement, is to physically dismantle Elbit's operations in the UK.
And they have been effective, haven't they? I mean, disruptive at the very least.
Huda Amori claims they've cost Elbit millions in profits and forced them to lose contracts. Elbit, for their part, describes their drones as the backbone of the Israeli fleet used in Gaza. So you have this very direct link.
The activists see themselves as physically stopping a war.
And the government sees a group attacking a lawful defense contractor.
Which brings us to the other side of the reaction today. Because while activists are celebrating, there are community groups who are genuinely afraid.
Absolutely. The Board of Deputies of British Jews and the Jewish Leadership Council issued a joint statement. They said they are deeply concerned by this ruling.
What's their specific worry?
They argue that Palestine Action hasn't just targeted factories. They say the group has targeted Jewish communal institutions and businesses, creating an atmosphere of fear and disruption that goes way beyond a normal political protest.
So for them, the terrorism label felt like a necessary shield.
Exactly. For the community's safety.
So the court was really threading a needle here. They had to balance the right to protest, the reality of criminal damage, and the feeling of safety in the community.
And their conclusion was, you can protect the community and punish the damage without abusing the definition of terrorism. The court didn't say Palestine Action are saints. They just said the government used the wrong tool, the wrong hammer.
Yeah. So what happens next? We have the appeal. Does the government actually have a leg to stand on here?
Well, most legal experts think it's an uphill battle for them. The High Court's ruling was very thorough. They didn't just say, we disagree.
Right.
They said, you violated your own policy. That is very hard to overturn. But politically, the government can't afford to look soft, so they will almost certainly drag this out.
Which means those 2,700 people stay in limbo.
Exactly.
You know, what really gets me is the precedent of it all. If the government had won this, if the ban had stood, what would that have meant for other protest groups?
That's the so what of this entire deep dive, really. If the government had established that significant property damage equals terrorism, then that door is wide open.
Yeah. So just stop oil smashing a pump. That could be terrorism.
Anti-nuclear protesters cutting a fence at a base. Terrorism. It effectively weaponizes the T word against anyone who is seriously disruptive.
It creates a sliding scale where the government can just redefine nuisance as national security threat whenever it's convenient for them.
And the High Court put a huge break on that today. They basically said, no, words have to mean things. Terrorism requires a specific level of violent intent that just wasn't present here.
It's just fascinating that in 2026, we're still arguing over the definition of a word that has defined, the last 25 years of geopolitics.
And we probably always will be. Power is the ability to define reality. Today, the court took a little bit of that power back from the executive branch.
So let's wrap this up for the listener who is maybe heading into the weekend wondering what to tell their friends at the pub.
The summary is this. The UK government tried to brand a protest group as terrorists because they were damaging weapons factories. The High Court said that's illegal and a massive overreach.
But the government is fighting back.
Right. And that's leaving thousands of ordinary people, vicars, vets, students, caught in this bizarre legal gray zone where they might be terrorists or they might just be protesters, depending on how an appeal goes in a few months.
And in the meantime, the police are watching.
Always.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought here. We've talked a lot about the law, but this is really about the line between resistance and crime, isn't it? If the state can label property damage as terrorism, where does civil disobedience actually live in the 21st century? Is it only legal if it's ineffective?
And you can flip that question too. If a group's stated goal is to physically destroy a business, to dismantle it brick by brick, is our current criminal law actually enough to stop them? Or does the modern nature of this kind of direct action require a whole new legal framework?
That is the question of the decade. We're going to be watching this appeal like hawks. Thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. Stay safe, Stay curious and maybe don't smash anything this weekend.